Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. This channel covers a lot of different topics, right? We're trying to explore all the different aspects of the second coming and some of the deeper doctrines. And we talk about secret combinations from time to time. And I do know that there are secret combinations, and you do too. It's talked about in the Book of Mormon. And there are people today that do things in secret. And there are people that are in power that are able to manipulate things. But I don't want to give the impression that I just believe all the different theories that are out there. And from time to time, people will bring this up. They'll either bring up the flat earth or they'll bring up the electric universe, which sometimes goes hand in hand with flat earth. And I want you to know I am not a flat earther. And I have some quotes to share with you to show that our church doesn't believe that the earth is flat. I don't know how many of you believe this. I've noticed that this particular audience, there's many that are very open-minded like I am and consider many different things. Sometimes I think it goes a little bit too far. I have considered this before. The reason why is because there seemed to be this like big thing that happened mostly like 2017, 18, the years around that, where a lot of these like secret combination type theories started becoming like very, very popular. And I don't know, there was just a lot going on in the secret combination world on social media. And it led me to question a lot of things. Some things no, some things I think it doesn't really make sense to me, some of these theories that are put out there. I listened to this group and they had some somewhat convincing arguments, but ultimately it is not a belief that I have adopted. And I just want that to be out there. And I'm not trying to, upset you or anything like that, but if you genuinely want to know, I just want to share some things with you that Joseph Smith said and a couple other general authorities that go against the idea of flat earth. I think a lot of people like this idea because, especially those that are in the 10 Lost Tribes crowd, the ones that believe that there's a hidden group of the 10 Lost Tribes, because this would give you one possibility of where they could be. There's different ideas within the flat earth community, exactly what the flat earth is and how far it goes. I think it's generally agreed that, that the earth is flat and that that Antarctica is essentially a ring of ice that goes around the planet like this. And so you have north that would be in the center, and then south is really, there's not a south because it's flat. So if you were to go south from from the center of the world, or according to a compass, then south would just be pointing away from the center, right? And so some believe that it stops right here and there's a dome. Others believe that it's like an infinite plane, or that it's a plane, but we don't know how far it goes. And that there could be other continents on the outside of this icy area, right? And so you can make the argument, well, that's where they went, and there's a big civilization over there, and they're going to come back, and they're going to come back in mass, and all this stuff. I'm not going to cover the 10 Lost Tribes here. I've done many videos about it. I have a spreadsheet for 10 Lost Tribe quotes. At some point, I'll probably do a 10 Lost Tribe playlist. I had one before, but now I'm doing my playlist where they're much more concise and there's episodes and they build on top of each other. But anyway, we're going to get back to this whole, this whole concept right here. So there's two reasons why I believe that this is not correct. One is because I've studied it. I've heard both, I've listened to the main channels that push this idea of the flat earth, but I also look at the other side as well. And that's always what you should do. Two of my favorite YouTube channels that kind of debunk these type of things, and maybe you've heard of them before, maybe not. You have Professor Dave Explains, and he does a really good job getting into the science in how these different theories, they don't hold up. And then there's also Mick West. Um, some of the things that they say you have to take with a grain of salt, because I know that Mick West, he's an atheist, and so he's going to approach things from that point of view. I'm not so sure about Professor Dave. He's definitely like secular. Yeah. There's been a few times that it's basically come out he's secular and, leftist and stuff like that. That doesn't mean that everything that they say is wrong. You just have to use discernment. But they do a lot of just demonstrations of that go against these different theories. Okay. Again, I'm not saying that there are not secret combinations. I do believe that there are. There's certain things out there that I do believe, but other things that I don't. But let's get back to this. I also have my recommended videos playlist. This has many different things on here, but these are videos from other YouTube channels that I think are really good. Some of them are compilations that have raw footage of different things like the tsunami in Japan in 2011 and just other things. Here's a video doing a tour of Melchizedek's temple in the city of David. Just like a bunch of different things. So if you haven't checked out this playlist, I would encourage you to do so. But anyway, I'm going to be adding some more videos that I think are pretty good from these two channels. I already have one on here called Astrology, Fact or Fiction, because unfortunately, there's a subsection of the church, a very small one, I think, that actually believes in astrology, and they get into that kind of stuff. It's usually the more like energy healer type or energy healing type crowd and stuff like that. The church has already spoken out against that, but anyway, this is a really good video looking at it from like a scientific point of view and how it doesn't really make any sense. So, okay, but back to this. Before I launch into the quotes, I just want to give you one pretty simple proof that the earth is not flat. And that is that up here in the northern hemisphere, we have Polaris, right? The North Star. The earth rotates, and it just so happens that there's this star in the sky north of the North Pole that pretty much aligns with the North Pole, and it doesn't move position, right? Because we're spinning. You look up, all the other stars move around it because the rotation of the earth and its axis are pointed toward Polaris. Well, there's a similar feature in the southern hemisphere. It's called the Southern Cross. It's a constellation. I guess it's like the equivalent of the North Star for the northern hemisphere. And so if you were to look south, like say that you were at the southern tip of Africa and you're looking south, right? Well, the Southern Cross should be over here somewhere. But at the same time, if you're in South America, at the tip of South America, looking south, it would be over here. It'd be in a completely different location. Even if you were just a few time zones apart, say that you're like in Madagascar, and then over here you're in Angola, Africa, and you're looking south. Well, for the people over here in Angola, the Southern Cross would be more over here, whereas for Madagascar it'd be more over here, and there'd be a detectable difference in position. So that's just like one of the more simple, proofs. There's a whole lot more to be said about the whole idea, but I'll leave that to people like Professor Dave and others. But now let's go to the more religious side of this, and let's see what Joseph Smith said. And then, like I said, I have a couple general authorities that have also spoken on this, and I'm sure there's a lot more out there. I'm probably not going to dig into this too deep, but I don't know. So right here, we're in Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, page 291. And there's a short section called Varied Creatures in Heaven. So this is Joseph Smith speaking. I suppose John saw beings there of 1,000 forms. He's talking about John the Revelator in the book of Revelation and the vision that he saw. I suppose John saw beings there of 1,000 forms that had been saved from 10,000 times 10,000 earths like this. Strange beasts of which we have no conception. All might be seen in heaven. The grand secret was to show John what there was in heaven. John learned that God glorified himself by saving all that his hands had made, whether beasts, fowls, fishes, or men, and he will glorify himself with them. Says one, I cannot believe in the salvation of beasts. Any man who would tell you that this could not be would tell you that the revelations are not true. John heard the words of the beasts giving glory to God and understood them. God who made the beasts could understand every language spoken by them. The four beasts were four of the most noble animals that had filled the measure of their creation and had been saved from other worlds because they were perfect. They were like angels in their sphere. We are not told where they came from, and I do not know, but they were seen and heard by John praising and glorifying God. The popular religionists of the day tell us, forsooth, that the beasts spoken of in the Revelation represent kingdoms. Now, really quick, just so you're not confused, in the book of Revelation, you have the four beasts that show up with the 24 elders, and those are actual beasts. Those are literally beasts. Later on in the book, it talks about the beast rising out of the sea, right, that has the 10 horns. That is symbolic, and it represents the nations of the earth. But the four beasts that are with the 24 elders, those are actual beasts. Okay. So anyway, the popular religionists of the day tell us, forsooth, that the beasts spoken of in the Revelation represent kingdoms. Very well, on the same principle, we can say that the 24 elders spoken of represent beasts, for they are all spoken of at the same time and are represented as all uniting in the same act of praise and devotion. This this learned interpretation is all flat as a pancake. What do you use such vulgar expressions for, being a prophet? Because the old women understand it. They make pancakes. Deacon Homespun said the earth was flat as a pancake and ridiculed the science which proved to the contrary. The whole argument is flat, and I don't know of anything better to represent it. The world is full of technicalities and misrepresentation, which I calculate to overthrow and speak of things as they actually exist. Okay, so he takes up this position that the earth is not flat, that you have somebody, I don't know if this was an actual person, Deacon Homespun, or if he's just making fun of a hypothetical person, but you have this person that says the earth is flat as a pancake, and then Joseph Smith agrees with the fact that science has proved to the contrary, that the earth is not flat. So here, this is the position of Joseph Smith. I don't know if he's ever talked about it before. Again, I may look into it further at some point. But then I have this as well. Just before starting this video, I found this quote that we just read from Joseph Smith, so I'm going to have to add it to my quotes A through Z spreadsheet. But on row 43, I have that one for flat earth. So let me read what I have here. So let me see, I'll go to 200. Okay, this is from Joseph F Merill of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. The name of the talk is Some Fundamentals of Gospel Teachings, April 1949 General Conference. As is generally known, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is set off from all other churches, Christian and non-Christian alike, by many characteristic doctrines in doctrines and teachings. We hold firmly to the doctrine that the Holy Trinity is made up of three separate and distinct personal beings, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, in whose image we ourselves are created, as declared in Genesis 1:27. Notwithstanding the vast majority of civilized people, being nearly all Christians, reject the teaching that God is a personal being, the truth of the matter is not in the least affected by this rejection. So, yeah, it doesn't matter how many people believe something. The truth is the truth. It's not dependent on numbers or popularity. Okay, continuing. In the 15th century, the world believed the earth was flat. Columbus, that it was round. Who was right? The claim that Joseph Smith, a 14-year-old boy, actually saw and heard two glorious personal beings, the Father and the Son, who appeared in answer to his humble prayer for wisdom, is a basic truth in Mormonism, the validity of which is not affected even though disbelieved by the vast majority of civilized men. So here he's comparing the misconception that the earth is flat and how that's how the whole world believed that at that time. But it turned out that Columbus was right and that it was actually round, or a sphere, a globe. Okay, and then the last one, this is Theodore M. Burton, assistant to back in those days, they called it the Council of the 12 Apostles. It was a quorum, but they, like when you go to conference reports and stuff, they use Council of the 12 Apostles instead. Nowadays, they say Quorum of the 12 Apostles. It's always been a quorum. Okay, anyway, the assistant to the Council of the 12 Apostles. The name of the talk is Trust the Prophet, October 1961, General Conference. Life for ordinary man is oftentimes frightening and bewildering. There is so much that we mortals fear. There is so much that we do not understand. There is so much that we do not know. When we talk of knowing, we talk of knowledge, and it would be well to ask ourselves what we mean by knowledge, quote unquote. Knowledge is only our interpretation of the evidence before us. If our interpretation of the evidence is wrong, our knowledge is false. Sometimes, therefore, we make grave errors, for our interpretation of the evidence is wrong. What a shock it is for us to realize that what we once thought we knew is wrong. This has occurred many times in the history of the earth. Why the evidence was so plain to those who stated that the earth was flat, that when anyone mentioned that the earth is round, it was a ridiculous thing. And the people just laughed at the idea. Yet by the evidence we have today, we interpret this to mean the earth is round, and we claim that previous persons just didn't understand the evidence presented to them. The same thing is true when we talked about the sun revolving around the earth. Why any man with eyes to see could actually see the sun revolving around the earth. Yet, our interpretation of the evidence today is just the reverse of this. So, what we say we know is not always true. And so, you guys, this also kind of it underscores the fact that we need to go to authoritative sources, especially when it comes to the church and doctrines of the church. You can't just you can make up your own beliefs and you can try and justify things, but ultimately where you're going to find the true and authorized doctrines of the church is in the scriptures and the correct interpretation of the scriptures. And we get that through listening to the prophet and the apostles and the general authorities. That's how you know what a scripture says, because again, sometimes there's certain parts of the scriptures that are just very clear. There's not really need for interpretation. But other times it's not so clear, especially when it comes to prophecy or when you start having symbols involved. And so that's when you look to the living prophet and for his interpretation, or that of the rest of the general authorities. So there's so much more I could say about that, but that would go off into an entirely different thing when it comes to listening to the prophet and adhering to official church doctrine. That's why I'm doing this entire exercise right here, where I'm collecting as many quotes as I can for all these different topics. If we have one quote from one general authority, that's good. It's a good thing. But it's not as strong unless there's other quotes from other general authorities that back that up. It's been said, I can't remember who said it. I think it was maybe Elder Neil L. Anderson. He talked about the fact that you're not going to find, what did he say? Okay, let's see. Control F, interpretation. Oh no, I have it under quotes, or I have it under quotes, common misconceptions. Yeah, this is under the misconception. I should try and privately interpret scriptures having to do with the second coming. Or you could put in just any prophecy or you know, things that are more complicated to understand. I should try to privately do it. Remember, we are all sharing reality together. We're all sharing the church together, and the church has an official interpretation of almost anything. There's some things that are left open that we don't have an official answer for, but most things the church it's had the scriptures this entire time. And there have been many, many people that have already gone over all the different scriptures that you read, and most likely there is an official interpretation of whatever prophecy. And if there's not, then you don't see very much about it at all. Sometimes there is no interpretation. It's just kind of left until sometime in the future when the Lord reveals more. So let's see. Well, we'll go with this. Dale G. Renlund. A second element of the framework, he's talking about receiving revelation, personal revelation. A second element of the framework is that we receive personal revelation only within our purview and not within the prerogative of others. In other words, we can take off and land in our appointed runway. The importance of well-defined runways was learned early in the history of the Restoration. Hiram Page, one of the 8 witnesses to the Book of Mormon, claimed to be receiving revelations for the entire church. Several members were deceived and wrongly influenced. In response, the Lord revealed that no one shall be appointed to receive commandments and revelations in this church except my servant Joseph Smith, until I shall appoint another in his stead. Doctrine, commandments, and revelations for the church are the prerogative of the living prophet, who receives them from the Lord Jesus Christ. That is the prophet's runway. It would be contrary to the economy of God for others to receive such revelation, which belongs on the prophet's runway. Personal revelation rightly belongs to individuals. You can receive revelation, for example, about where to live, what career path to follow, or whom to marry. Church leaders may teach doctrine and share inspired counsel, but the responsibility for these decisions rests with you, personal decisions. That is your revelation to receive. That is your runway. Okay, so that's important. There's a lot of times people will just like say things in the comments authoritatively, like, this is what's going to happen, when they're not in a position of authority to say that. And then they don't back it up with any authoritative sources, and a lot of times I'll ask you guys, I'll be like, okay, if that's true, I want to know more about it. Do you have a source for that? And there's probably only like maybe 5% of the time that somebody will actually respond and tell me where I can find that thing that they're talking about. Other times it's clear that it's not backed up by an authoritative source, or it's somebody's own personal opinion, or a misunderstanding of how personal revelation works. Anyway, I'm going to find that other thing. Okay, so let's see. Neil L. Anderson, not found in an obscure passage. That should bring it up. Yeah, here it is. How can I know if something is, I hear, is official doctrine? Well, I want to go to his actual. Well, okay, that's fine. Let's go to this article. Let's see. It looks like this is in the February 2017 New Era. Control F, obscure. Okay, this is something that Elder Neil L. Anderson said in the October 2012 General Conference. Let's zoom in, go down. Quote, "The doctrine of the church is taught by all 15 members of the First Presidency and Quorum of the 12. It is not hidden in an obscure paragraph of one talk. True principles are taught frequently and by many. Our doctrine is not difficult to find." So I think that's really important. I do think it's important, though, to take note of what prophets and apostles have said, but I feel like there's just more and more and more validity to what they say if more people repeat that thing. And they typically don't go into some of these more fringe topics. In fact, very little has been said, for example, about Adam Amen It is an official doctrine of the church. It's in the scriptures, but the only ones that really expand on that are Joseph Smith himself, Joseph Fielding Smith, Bruce R. McConkie. We recently read from John Taylor. He had some stuff to say about Adamant-Nayamin. And, that brings us to another thing. Just because something isn't repeated, I don't think that you just throw it away or that you determine that it's just that apostles or prophet's opinion. If it contradicts with what others, with what others have said, then yes, I think it's safe to assume that was their opinion. But there's always like this tendency when an apostle or prophet says something that you don't like, that you want to invalidate the person or what they're saying and just write it off as their opinion. And I think that that's a very slippery slope. I think the better thing to do is to take note of it. If it doesn't conflict with what others are saying, then just take note of it. And yeah, it may be their opinion or it may not be. It may not be. So there's a whole lot more that I could say about that, but I think what's important to know is that the important things are repeated often, and they usually have to do with our own personal salvation. Everything else, like things having to do with the 10 lost tribes, things having to do with, I don't know, I can't think of an example, Adamant-Nayamin or whatever. It's nice to know. It's not necessary for our salvation. It's just, it's nice things to know. But I don't think any of our testimonies are built around those things. And at some point, we will have a perfect knowledge of all that. And then at that point, once we know, then we can look back and say, oh, yeah, he was just giving his opinion, or, oh, he was actually right. He was the only one that said it, but he was right. So I think that this is a good thing to do, to collect quotes about all things that you're interested in. And the more that you have, the more likely it is that it's not just opinion. But either way, we're talking about prophets and apostles, and we're not in a position where we can declare that something is their opinion or not. The only ones that can do that are other general authorities. Otherwise, like we're elevating ourselves to the position of the prophet or the apostles when we say that it's just somebody's opinion. So let's not do that. Instead, let's see if anybody in authority has contradicted that, and then go with that. Otherwise, just take note of it and move on, and just be aware of it. But I think that's all I need to say. That pretty much covers everything that I wanted to talk about. So if you excuse me, if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.